Hi, I'm Miss Hearn. Let's get started. In this video, we're going to look at finding the results of an election by pairwise comparison. We're given a preference summary which shows how each of the voters ranked each of the candidates, and we're going to use a pairwise comparison matrix. The way you set up a pairwise comparison matrix is, for example, if you have 4 candidates, you're going to need a 4 by 4 matrix. In order to have headings, you're going to put in 5 columns and 5 rows. Put in your headings, option A, option B, option C, option D, and then down the first column, option A wins, option B wins, option C wins, option D wins. And then I like to add a little column on the right for the point totals for when we get to that point. All right, so this is going to organize our work for us. Then you're going to fill in the diagonal with little dashes to show that nothing's going to go on the diagonal. And the reason is because each of these cells represents the number of times a certain candidate wins over another candidate. And for example, option A cannot win over option A. It can't win over itself. So we don't need to fill anything in on the diagonal. Let's go ahead and look at what's going to go in each of the other cells. So I'm going to start with A over B. And so that's when A wins and option B loses to A. So you're going to go up to your preference summary and you're going to look at each one of the ballot variations. We have 4 different ballot variations here. In the first ballot variation, A is ranked ahead of B, so A wins 12 times. In the second ballot variation, A is ranked 4th and B is ranked 3rd, so A does not win there. In the third ballot variation, A is ranked ahead of B, so A is going to get 13 votes there. And then in the fourth ballot variation, A is behind B. So A over B is going to consist of 12 plus 13 is 25 points. 25 different voters ranked A ahead of B. Now I'm going to do the same thing with A over C. So looking in the first column, A is in first place, so it beats everybody. So it beats C, so that's going to be 12. And then for the second column, A is actually in last place. It's not going to beat anybody. In the third column, A is ahead of everybody. It's in first place, so it definitely beats C. So that's 13 points for A. And in the fourth column, A does not win. So for A over C, we have 12 plus 13 equals 25. Again, now let's check A over D. A wins in the first column for sure, first to fourth. A always loses in that second column. A always wins in this third column. And let's see, A got 3rd and D got 4th in this last column. So A beat D in this one as well. So for this one, we're going to have 12 plus 13 plus 10 equals 35. Let's see how B did on up against A here. So by the way, what I would expect is, since the total number of votes is 12 plus 15 plus 13 plus 10, which is 50 votes. And I see that A won over B 25 times, so I would expect that B won over A 25 times as well, because it has to add up to the 50 times that were possible. But let's just confirm that. So looking at B, B got 2nd place in the first ballot variation, which does not beat A. B got 3rd place in the second one, which does beat A. In the third ballot variation, B had 3rd, but A had 1st, so B lost. And then in the fourth ballot variation, B had 1st place. He beats everybody, so wins there. So that would be 15 plus 10, which is 25, like we expected. In fact, every pairing that's on a diagonal, that are diagonally associated, those are going to add up to the total number of votes possible, in this case 50. If I know that A beat C 25 times, then C must have beaten A 25 times as well. Let's just go ahead and check that. So looking at option C, in the first ballot variation, it got 3rd place, which does not beat A's 1st. In the second ballot variation, it got 2nd place, which does beat A's 4th place. In the third ballot variation, 2nd place, which doesn't beat A's 1st place. And then in the last, we have 2nd place, which does beat 3rd. So 15 plus 10 is 25 as we expected. Now we also know that A won over D 35 times, and 50 minus 35 is 15. So I would expect D won over A 15 times. Let's go ahead and check that. In the first ballot variation, D got last place, definitely loses. In the second ballot variation, D got first place, definite win. In the third one, last place, definite lose. And last place again, definite lose. So the only time that D won was in the second ballot variation, which had 15 votes, so that makes sense. D over A is 15. So you would go ahead and fill in the rest, and then you're gonna go through and cross off any losses. You look at each pairing. So for example here, 25 to 25 is not a loss, it's actually a tie. So on losses, what I like to do, let's look at one that's a loss. C won over D 35 times, but D won over C 15. So D over C loses. So I cross it off completely. Similarly for B over D and D over B, we're gonna cross off the 15, the 35 dominates. The two blue ones, A over D and D over A over D won, D over A lost. But when I have a tie, like with A over B and B over A, the 25 to 25, I'm just gonna put a single diagonal slash through to indicate a tie. And then I'm gonna continue with that. A over C, that's a tie, that's a tie. B over C, we have B over C loses, C over B wins, and that's everything. So we've got at least one of them crossed off in every pairing, or if it's a tie, they both have a slash through them. So now what you do is every tie is worth a half and every win is worth 1 point. So for example, option A is going to get a half a point for tying B and a half a point for tying C, and then a point for beating D. So A is going to get 2 points altogether. For option B gets a half a point for tying A and a point for beating D, so that's 1.5 points. For option C, a half a point for tying with A, 1 point for beating B, and 1 point for beating D. So that's going to be 2.5 points. And then option D gets 0 points because it lost all 3 of the matchups. So then the winner is determined by the number of points. So in this case, option C wins with 2.5 points that beats the other points. Now, to check our answer, I'm going to visit MissHearnMath.com and I'm going to click on calculators. And right here, there is a link to a pairwise comparison vote calculator. So I'm going to click on that. You have to pick the tab that has the correct number of candidates. In this case, we have 4 options, so I'm going to click on the 4 options tab. And then I'm going to fill in the preference summary that I was given at the beginning. Across the top, I'm going to put the number of ballots of each variation, and then I'm going to put the rankings in each column. Now that I have finished entering the preference summary, I'm just going to check and make sure that I got my pairwise comparison matrix set up correctly. The values in the A wins row are 25, 25, and 35, which is what I had. And all of the rest of them match up as well. Down at the bottom, it automatically populates our points tally to 1.5, 2.5, and 0. Yep, that's the same thing that we got. So we can be confident that option C was the winner. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps other students to find the video. You can also share the video, subscribe to my channel, or visit my website, MissHearnMath.com, for free election calculators.